And welcome to a new video of our educational video series. Today we are going to talk about fat loss. How does it work? Understanding this is going to help you do things or not do things to improve the fat loss process. And before we go into it, personally, I've lost over 50 kilos, so that's 110 pounds in my life as an adult, not in one go, but over different fat loss phases. And I've coached over 150 women to reach that kind of goals. The best transformation that we had rates of loss of around 2 kilo a month. So that's around 4.5 pounds per month. And those things are important to understand so that you can lose body fat if this is something that you want to work on. So let's dive in. We are going to cover what is even body fat, the difference between burning and losing fat, because it's not the same, and this is something that's very often mixed and confused, but it's actually not exactly the same. How to optimize body fat percentage, and there's a level that's too low, obviously, but there's also a level that's a bit too high, and we want to understand better how to optimize this and what you should avoid if you want to lose body fat. So first, what is body fat? So actually it's an organ, and it's not something that just there to bother you and makes you look in a way that you don't feel comfortable with. But body fat is an organ, and as such it has some very specific functions in your body that have actually a great impact on your health. The first one is an energy storage to prevent us from dying during starvation. So this is something that's super important, and for a lot of people who live in the Western world, we are so lucky that this is something that's not really a problem anymore today. At least for the like most people. But there was a time not so far ago where it was not possible to go into a supermarket and just buy food. We did not have that kind of abundance of food, and it was super important to carry enough reserve of energy on us, on our body, so that we don't die when there's a food shortage. So this is like the biggest function, and it's a very important one. But then body fat also produces peptide and hormone, and they help with hunger regulation and immune function. So it's not just like energy supply, but it also impacts other stuff in our body, and hunger regulation is a big one. It also helps produce heat and have a thermic isolation effect. So we have actually three different types of fat cells. We have white fat cells, we have brown fat cells, and we have beige or gray fat cells. And the difference in color comes from the amount of mitochondria into the fat cells. And the mitochondria is a part of the cell that helps with energy production. And in brown fat cells, it's called brown fat cells because they look more brown, and it's this color because there's a lot more mitochondria in them. And because you have a lot more mitochondria in those fat cells, then you produce a lot more energy, and this produce a lot of heat when you need it. On the other hand, it also help isolate your organs or your muscles or overall your body if it's very cold. Then the body fat is going to help keep you warm, which is also pretty nice. And fat also serves as a toxin storage tissue. So if you get poisoned, for example, because body fat cells are not metabolically very active, then this is a place where the body can just put stuff that would be dangerous for other organs, for example, or should not be in your blood. And so it's going to use fat cell to just get those toxins in. Now, when we look at losing and reducing body fat, we have to differentiate between burning and losing fat because it's not exactly the same thing. And in the upper body, the number of fat cell doesn't change, but the size of the fat cell can change. So in essence, when you're an adult, you're not going to, by burning fat or even by losing fat, you are not really going to change the amount of fat cells that you have, but you are going to change their size. On the other hand, in the lower body, you can change a bit the number of fat cells slightly over time, as well as the size. Body fat in the lower body can have a protective effect from a health standpoint, and it's actually better to carry a bit more body fat in your legs than in your upper body. And this is one of the reasons why we talk about, or while health instances talk about the hip to waist ratio. And if you have a very wide waist in comparison to your hips, then it's actually for your health not a good thing. Over time, if you manage to bring your body fat to a lower percentage and you manage to stay that way for a long time, then your body can get rid of some of the body fat cells that you have. But it's going to happen in your lower body mostly, and it's not going to be a ton of those. Now, burning fat as fuel source for energy production doesn't lead to a reduction in fat cell size. There are plenty of benefits to train in a way that's going to burn a lot of fat and to get better at burning fat. So this is typically what we do with low intensity cardio. And this is going to really help, for example, the recovery part, and it's also going to make you more endurant. And what else? It's just going to be very beneficial. It's going to be great for your metabolism. It's going to, you are going to become more metabolically flexible, which is a great thing. But if you do this, it doesn't mean that you actually reduce the size of the fat cell. So what you need to do if you want to do that, you want to train with a high intensity because fat loss happens during the recovery phase, as body fat cells provide energy for the regeneration and energy replenishment of challenge cells. For example, from the muscles, but also from the lungs. This one is a very important one. So when you train at a very high intensity, for example, when you do strength training and you go very close to failure, then you are going to create some damage in your muscle cells. And when you are sleeping, then your body is going to use the energy that's to be found in the body fat cells to help with the regeneration of the muscle cells that you've trained. When you do a very intense cardio workout where you do, for example, sprints or high intensity interval training, but where the intensity is very high, then you breathe a lot, and your lung cells are going to be challenged very much, and they have to work a lot to facilitate the exchange of oxygen and CO2, and all the air that coming in and getting out is something that put a lot of stress on your lung cells, and they need a lot of energy to get repaired. And this is something that happens during the night. Of course, this is going to be also very strongly influenced by um, energy balance. So whether you're in a calorie deficit or not is going to have a big impact here. It's going to be decisive. I'm not saying that it's not the case. It's just like the mechanism of how fat loss happens. It's not because you burn fat during a workout that you are going to lose fat. In fact, the the um, the workouts that are going to lead to fat loss are workouts that burn mainly carbs because it's such a high intensity. So the higher the intensity of the workout is, the more carbs you are going to burn. If you haven't checked it out already, then also check out the video Cardio, the double-edged sword for body composition, where I explain that kind of stuff. It's a very good one. But as I already said, the higher the intensity is of the workout, the more carbs you are going to burn. And this is the kind of workouts you need to be doing if during the recovery you want to be able to reduce body fat, because this is the body fat is going to be used for the regeneration of the cells that has been challenged. Now, there you go. So how to optimize body fat percentage. Energy balance, as already stated, will always play a role. So this is something you have to keep an eye on. You have to know your maintenance calories and to keep your weight stable. And then once you do that, then you also want to have some sort of a calorie deficit. And this is always going to play a role in increasing or decreasing body fat. Then you also want to provide the nutrient needed for recovery. And this is something that's fundamental. And it means that you also want to have the carbs, you also want to have the protein, you also want to have some fat, because all of those are going to play a role there. The absolute training intensity is crucial. So you really want to reach that kind of intensity that's going to create a big stimulus for your body. It doesn't mean that you have to overtrain or do more. It just means that the intensity has to be spot on. And trust me, when you do this, then you also know, because it's tiring, and this is where you start to to serial progress happening. You want to consistently apply progressive overload. This is something that's absolutely needed. And the reason why is, once you've set a new standard for yourself, you've created a stimulus, you went to the gym, you had a very intense workout. If you keep doing the same workout every time, then your body is going to adapt, and then it's not going to change for a long time, because at first it's very difficult, but then as you get stronger and better, then the same stimulus is not going to provide the same kind of intensity. So let me give you an example here that's going to make it easier to understand. If you go into the gym and you do a RDL with 200 pounds, it's around 90 kilo. So you do this, and at first you can do it only for 5 reps. It's very difficult. You are sore on the next day, and like, hey, it was a very, very intense workout. It was a very strong stimulus. But then if you keep doing exactly the same thing over and over and over again over a week, so you still do RDLs with 200 pounds for 5 reps, and you do this like another week, and then another week, and then another month, and then another month, and half a year goes by, and you've done the same every time. Your body is not going to keep changing because of that, because the stimulus is the same. And at the beginning, the stimulus was very intense. You had a high intensity. Your body has to recover from that. But then after 6 months, then you have no intensity, more intensity. And this is why you want over time to push, yourself so that you can you can apply progressive overload, and you can have constantly a very intense training that's going to lead to that kind of adaptation where your body is going to use the body fat to help you recover from your workout. If you want to do this, if you want to consistently apply progressive overload, then fueling your workouts is something that's very important, and it will allow for more intensity and more progress. Check out our high metabolism habit workbook if you want to know how to do this, but this is something that's highly important and highly disregarded. The post workout meal is going to be key for positive adaptation from training because it's going to kickstart the recovery process, the repair process, and it's going to reduce the stress that you had from training. So, this is something that is super important. You also want to have a micronutrient rich diet to support detox pathways. So, you want to have plenty of unprocessed food, of whole foods, because it's not only about the macros, it's not only about the calories, but it's also about the minerals and vitamins that you get from those foods. This is going to help you support the recovery and all the detox pathways, because once you've set a stimulus in the gym, once you've had that high intensity, then there are some kind of micro traumas happening in your cells and your muscles, and they have to be repaired, but also some of them has to be removed. And this is something that happens through the detox pathway. So for example, your liver, your gut, and your kidneys are very important, and we want to support them with a diet that's rich in micronutrient. And you also want to have some time from time to time, doesn't have to be crazy, a crazy amount, but low intensity training is going to be super important to enable the capacity to handle high intensity training. So when I say you want to have that kind of intensity, it's super important. I'm not saying you want to train every time above your limit and do more than what you can recover from. This is something that's super important. It's not what I'm preaching here. I'm saying you want to hit the right intensity. You want to train with that high intensity, but you also want to make sure that the recovery is going to be very good. And training at a low intensity is something that's going to help you recover from and prepare yourself for high intensity training. And for cardio, for example, if you like to do some sprints or some high intensity interval training, then make sure that you also have some very low intensity cardio as a complement to that. And when you do your strength training, then make sure that you also do plenty of reps, for example during warm-ups that are not close to the highest intensity, that are not close to failure, so that it's going to help you develop very good technique. And it's also going to help grease the groove with your joints, make everything juicy and very stable. And this is going to really prepare you and enable you to handle high intensity training. So this is what you want to do, and you also want to pay attention to things you don't want to do. So we are going to talk about what to avoid to if you want to lose body fat. You want to avoid training at a moderate to high intensity without ever going at peak intensity. This is something that we see quite a lot. Is what I was talking about the RDLs, for example. People that do the same kind of workout all over again, week after week after week after week. Those workouts are still going to be tiring, and they are still going to have an effect on your body and require some resources to recover from it, but they don't really provide a stimulus that's going to create a change in your body. So if you do this, then you are not going to have the intensity that's needed to really change how your muscle works, but also to kind of force your body to use the fats of the body fat cells to help with the recovery. So that's super important. You also want to avoid training in a fasted state because it's going to put a big brake on your performance possibility, capacity. You are not going to be able to push very hard during your training. It's going to be much, much more difficult to reach those high intensity. And it's just going to limit your progress. Besides that, it's also going to have a big impact on the stress response of the body. That's also going to be negative for improving body composition and getting rid of body fat. This is something that's a bit different, but it's also very important. So don't train in a fasted state. You also want to avoid eating too little in the first part of the day and a lot in the second part of the day and the evening. This has also a lot to do with the stress response of the body. It's going to create more of the so-called stress hormones like cortisol. And again, in itself, those hormones are not bad. We need them to survive. We need them to function. They help get energy. But when it remains elevated for a long period of time, it's definitely suboptimal, and it's something that's going to make improving body composition much, much, much harder than it needs to be. You also want to avoid exposure to high toxic environments. So, for example, mold in the bathroom or in a bedroom, but also like toxic environments where there's a lot of negative energy from people because they talk shit about everybody else or complain about everything. That kind of stuff you just don't want to have around, because this is like negative energy from people is not going to have a direct impact on your ability to lose body fat, but it's just like not nice to be around, and it's not conducive of having the right behavior to improve body composition. You want to avoid having too little food around your workouts. So it's not only avoid training in a fasted state, but you also want to have post-workout and pre-workout enough fuel that comes in, enough energy that's going to help you with the performance, but that's also going to help you start the recovery process right after you stop training. And you also want to avoid lack of sleep. This is a big one. It's really going to make it much more difficult to lose body fat. So sleep as well, and as much as often as you can. Those are the things that you want to avoid if you want to make it easy to lose body fat. And remember that burning fat is not the same as losing body fat. And to lose body fat, you want to have those high intensity during training, but you also want to have those lower intensities, because this is what's going to help you handle the high intensity and prepare yourself for those higher intensity into the training. So this is basically the impact of training on losing body fat. And if you have any questions, then make sure to ask them in the community, and talk to you next time.